Now, devs deviated from the norm with Battlefield Hardline, tried to give us more of a cops and robbers type experience. Well, let's see how well they pulled it off.
Nick Mendoza, right? Oh, hey, look at that. Shit just got real.
Battlefield Hardline is one of those games that was met with a lot of flack before its release. Gamers claimed it looked more like glorified DLC than an actual standalone game. I never thought so, as I saw the clear departure from all the other Battlefields I played, including the Bad Company series. I think the devs should be commended for taking the risky step of deviating from the done-to-death military-style shooters to this cops and robbers approach. Now, of course, Payday and other titles have done this before, but I'm not arguing whether it's an original idea or not, just acknowledging the fact that visceral games took the path less traveled.
It's the least I can do.
You're Nick Mendoza, who starts the campaign off as a straight shooter by-the-books cop, who gets put to the test by some not-so-by-the-books squad mates, and is eventually framed and thrown in prison. You get busted out while you're on the prison bus. You find out some of the bad cops weren't that bad, and some were worse than you thought. A very generic story done in an episodic style which further adds to its cliche feel. The campaign and story are the weakest points of Hardline, as nothing here is even slightly interesting. Half hour into the campaign and you'll get this been there, done it all before feeling. The story is however presented with some good voice acting. The visuals are okay, by no means great but good enough, and there are one or two immersive elements added in. And devs tried to create a pace in game where sometimes you're running in guns blazing, sometimes you're stealthily going through stages arresting people, and sometimes you're not doing much at all. Just driving around, shooting the breeze, or looking for packages in an alligator infested swamp. So the devs did make an attempt at interesting story progression. It wasn't enough to keep me entertained, however, nothing gripping.
Look, for what it's worth, I'm sorry.
The whole arrest the bad guys instead of shooting them thing seemed interesting at first, but then went off into the realms of gimmicky and unrealistic. Although you do need to keep your weapon pointed at all suspects, at some point while slapping the cuffs on, the remaining suspects would have more than enough time to shoot you or run, even when your partner says she's got it. It feels like a cheat, actually, as these cold-blooded, hardened criminals submit way too easily to the flash of a badge. Sometimes they might not, but the whole process just feels very fake, unrealistic, and scripted. You have a reward system based on your performance during these missions. If you decide to go the arrest everybody route, basically the good cop route, you'll find that you unlock weapons faster, but on the flip side, if you go in renegade 90s Hollywood cop style, you might not unlock the guns, but all you really need to do is take the guns off fallen enemies to unlock them anyway. Basically what I'm saying is, this unlock reward system feels redundant, completely unnecessary. The kind of thing you could go through the entire game without ever taking into consideration, as most of the guns do the same thing, with the exception of say the sniper rifle, which comes in really handy by the last stage, and maybe the shotgun for some stopping power. But to say play good cop because there are significant differences in benefits would be a lie. It just looks like they threw that in there to highlight the handcuffs can be used element. I understand they're emphasizing on the you're a cop thing, but it seemed they either overdid it or oversimplified it. Just seems way too linear and in your face. Although nothing new, I did enjoy the driving stages. I enjoyed most of the Hollywood set piece style elements. Nothing I never saw before, but like I said, things they tried to implement otherwise weren't that fascinating. So if it means I have to take some of the same old to remain entertained, then I'll take it.
Sure, why not? It's been a pretty quiet day so far.
Throwing in a tank was apparently a must-have for a Battlefield game. That was neither here nor there for me, but when I saw situations like this, where you had to put pressure on your partner's wound to stop the bleeding while fending off an army of goons, I thought, yeah, this feels immersive. But that was apparently a one-time thing. And on the subject of your partner, the AI in this game is the usual rubbish. Completely useless NPC teammates.
Fuck you!
There are a few other elements of the campaign that bothered me as well. Sometimes the interaction button was unresponsive. You'd run up to a door or something and have to press the X button like 3 times before it opened or responded. Then, reloading. Well, let's just say these guys are never in a hurry. And then your character. Even though you have been framed and incarcerated, after this fact you're still going around the place doing the whole freeze you're under arrest thing. Like I implied earlier, everything about this arrest mechanic screams asinine gimmick.
Give me a reason not to knock you out.
one, I hit back.
Oh, I'm counting on it.
Then there are the odd similarities to the characters in Battlefield 4. You have the tough as nails Asian lady who does the whole now I'm a good guy, later I'm a bad guy thing, and then the smart mouth token black guy. No, I've seen this before. Go play through Battlefield 4's campaign to see what I'm talking about, which by the way is way better.
You have an engineering degree now?
I got an engineering degree like you got a medical degree.
I do have a medical degree. Okay, whatever. Are you sure about this?
Here's a saving grace. Hardline's multiplayer. It almost feels as if two different studios developed this game, as the multiplayer feels completely separate from the campaign. You know how you'll be playing Call of Duty's multiplayer and hear some references to its campaign like Irons is not gonna like this, or other similarities that remind you you're playing the same game. Well, I don't get that here, and maybe that's a good thing. The multiplayer feels really good to me, with the exception of some questionable spawn points where the enemy spawns in your back pocket and such. We have modes like Heist, Hotwire, Blood Money, Rescue, Crosshairs, Conquest, and my favorite, Team Deathmatch. The multiplayer takes us back to a true Battlefield feel. The only major difference would be the vehicles, which most might argue is a huge difference, but I personally never enjoyed those game types anyway. I know that's Battlefield's major pull and what separates it from its competitors, that and the huge maps, but I do enjoy Battlefield's multiplayer for other reasons. Now if only devs would add a hardcore mode. You'll see more in-depth features on Battlefield's multiplayer in the lobby, as there's a ton of stuff to talk about. But for now, just know this. The PvP in Battlefield Hardline is its strongest point, as the campaign was quite lackluster, and I agree, most military shooters, particularly Call of Duty and Battlefield's strong point, is the multiplayer, but Hardline's campaign missed the mark by a long shot. So did Battlefield Hardline make the grade? Well, I guess that depends on how high or low the grade is. You see, the campaign isn't awful. It's just that, in this day and age, it really feels like it came up short, with nothing new to offer. Devs tried to add some meat to these bones, but it just feels like EA and Visceral Games simply rushed through the campaign, sprinkled on some gimmicks, so they could move over to the multiplayer. And while the multiplayer is enjoyable and feels very rewarding, as ranking up in Battlefield's multiplayer always provided me with more of a challenge than, let's say, Call of Duty, it's not enough to save this game, as I do appreciate and was looking forward to a decent single player experience. So with a mediocre try-hard campaign with a pretty good multiplayer component, I'll say it just barely made it. The lab gives Battlefield Hardline a 6 out of 10.
What? No way, Kimosabe.